Hey, check out this stuff, CRE 321. I was watching a few different videos. It's a sandable epoxy primer, and it was one of the two recommended by, what's the channel? Sylvester Customs, I believe. Anyway, big shout out to him for recommending that, because I've tried it out. And like he says, you can use one product instead of 4 or 5 products. This stuff is sandable and whatnot. Anyway, so I picked it up. Just to show you what's going on in the shop a little bit. These are off the Ram Rumblebee. You see parts scattered all over the place, but this was pretty beat up. It had a lot of little stone chips and scratches and little cuts and furry little plastic hairs sticking out. So basically, I mean, you can fill it in different ways, but I mean, I know that the Bondo or the filler is going to stick to this primer. So basically all I did is I cleaned it up really well, sanded the whole thing very well, probably with about a 320. And then I poured a nice thick coat of that on. It's, well, I only did it once, but I mean, it's probably about 2 coats. And I thought that'd be a great idea. And the other thing we had, the Ram hood scoops are actually made out of metal. So what happens is where they sit on the edge here, there's a little plastic gasket that goes between that and the hood. So you can kind of see how that's feathered out. The reason it looks like grind marks is because it is. So I went around with a Rolock and spun all the loose paint off, and then I sandblasted that edge ever so slightly because I don't want the rust to come back. Then after we did that, we epoxy primed, and I figured, you know what, let's do the whole scoop so we could try it out. And here's what I'm going to show you. This is like, hang on. You can see here where there's a little bit of orange peel, and I mean, it's pretty minor. And I shot this with about 30 PSI, and I did, like I say, probably about 2 coats worth in one shot with a 1.8 tip. So there's the low spot right there, and it's really minor. I might try to block it out a little bit, but if not, we'll put a bit of fill in it. There's another one here somewhere, but let me grab a sanding block. So yeah, I had to basically go all around the outside edge, finish out the front. There was a lot of surface here, so we sandblasted these ends really, really well. A little bit in there. This still has to be sanded. But just to give you an idea, here is, certainly you're picking up that orange peel. And you can see where I did all the little stone chips and spots. The orange peel kind of sanded out with it. So let me set this up about here. All right, check this out. Now this is a paper I was using on the filler already, so it's actually kind of dull, but you do it crisscross in circles, right? At just different directions. Check this out. It's all gone except right there. It is totally sandable. This stuff is pretty cool. It's a 2-to-1 to half. So 2-to-1 for the epoxy primer, and I guess whatever the other stuff is you put in it. And then half reducer, which is all I used. And like I say, it's, even if you look at the bumper, I mean, the texture there is a little bit. The camera actually makes it look worse than it is, but it's look at the size of my finger compared to that. It's so small. It's so small. And I mean, I put that on real thick. Now I know in some of his videos he mentioned he uses this, and then I think it's the sister to this is called the VP, what, 2050 or something like that. Check that out. The orange peel right here is totally gone, and I barely touched it. So this is going to sand up like super easy. And I mean, some of this peel, like I'm talking, it is so tiny, you could probably paint right over it. So if you do, instead of 2-to-1 to half, you could do a 2-to-1. This is a different stuff that I used to use, so I'm not even going to talk about that because, well, it's nice, but I don't find it sticks as well. So we're going to scrap that all together, and I probably won't use that in my shop anymore. So this is all I'm going to use because this stuff is nice. The downside to this is, I mean, I don't know what you'd compare it to, but here in Ontario, Canada, it's about $4.50 a gallon. You know, and I mean, you get 1.5 gallons because you get 2 quarts of the one part, and then the primer itself is in a gallon. So 2-to-1 mix, you get about 1.5 gallons. But I mean, I used 3/4 of an inch out of that gallon, maybe. And I did the bumper and I did the scoop, and like, it's pretty thick on there. It's probably about the equivalent of 2 fairly wet coats. And I can see how, where if you had something nice like the hood scoop, or even this hood, I mean, if I wanted to epoxy prime this, it's already smooth. I could give it a quick sand with 320. Wow, probably even something coarser, because it hides stuff really well. All your little scratches and whatnot, you throw a couple coats on. I know they say you can even do 3. So, you know, when I'm doing a big car, something like this, we got the 63 Cadillac, I'm probably going to throw 2 gallons on that. So probably use 1/2 gallon, maybe 3/4 of a gallon, and we'll do that to seal it all up when it's stripped. But after all the body work is done and what have you, and we're ready to seal it, I'll probably just go ahead and put like 3 medium wet coats on the whole car. And I mean medium wet, well, maybe it's just 3 wet coats. But anyway, you get the idea. We'll put a lot of it on, we can block it, sand it, and I mean, that stuff is nice. Will it eat a lot of paper? Probably, but I mean, everything does. I've also tried, while we're at it, this is the Sunlight paper. It's not bad. It's not awesome, but it's inexpensive. So I normally use Norton Gold. You're wasting less Norton Gold. That's just a fact. But I mean, it is a little more money. So that just depends on what you want. I mean, I think you can use any sandpaper you like. Just when you feel it goes soft, like this piece here, that's clearly done. But I mean, it'll still sand. It's not terrible. But I mean, the thing is, the more it'll cut, the smoother things will be. So keep that in mind. And then you don't want to be polishing it, right? Because you want enough. I mean, I'm a little old school, so I think a little bit of mechanical adhesion's nice. Like, I know you got guys talking like 400 wet, which is usually where I'd like to be. Your red Scotch-Brite, which is basically supposed to be, what, between 400 and 600, I believe they claim. So that's not bad, but some guys are like wet sanding down to like, you know, 600 wet or 800 wet. I've seen a few videos with 800 wet, and I mean, you're almost polished, right? So you're throwing a layer of paint over top of something smooth. So it's like a skin. But that being said, the one guy, there's one guy out there, and what he does is he'll throw 1 sealer coat. So instead of 2 to 1 to half, he uses that same stuff, and he'll do a 2 to 1 to 1 with the reducer, and he'll just basically put kind of like 1 thinner coat, if you will, just as a sealer to seal everything up. And then he waits a little bit of time, and then he paints right over it. You know, like, it's the same day, right? Where when you put a couple coats on, like I waited, it says about 3 days. If there's a guy out there who weighs it, I guess, or whatever, to see how long it takes, and he said about 3 days. So I waited about 5 days. So that's probably what I'll do with this. That's usually, like, I'm not doing production work here. It's all old stuff and restoration. So I usually have time. My customers are pretty good that if I tell them, look, it's going to take the time that it takes, they're usually okay with that. You know, so if you were doing collision, maybe you're doing a whole different thing. You want things to dry quick and whatnot. That's a whole other, I'm definitely no expert in that, you know. But yeah, this stuff is nice. It goes on, it sands, it's an epoxy, it's going to stick. When you go online, you can read all the the technical data and whatnot. And the company claims that you can pretty much shoot this on anything as long as it's clean. So I would recommend you sand everything. But I mean, you know, it's nice to know if you miss a little spot here or there or something, it's going to do the epoxy thing, and, you know, it'll chemically stick to itself, so, or to other things. But anyway, I just wanted to show that real quick. Very impressed. And again, like I say, in this case, that specific stuff right there, here it is again. So yeah, you mix that 2 to 1, and then add 1 more part of whatever reducer you're using, and that's all you need. Big shout out to Sylvester Customs for recommending that. Very happy, sir. It works really good. But anyway, that's it for today. I just thought I'd share that before I kept going and this got away from me. So if you just want one product instead of a dozen products and what have you, this is the stuff. And I got to tell you, there were scratches here from branches and whatnot. Like you can see where there was little chips where I filled, but this whole corner was a scrape, and it's gone. A little bit of scratchiness up in here, a couple little spots, but I mean, that's basically sand and shoot. This stuff is nice. I mean, I'm sure there's better, softer, thicker, you know, different 2K high builds out there, but I mean, I think if you're doing half decent work, this stuff should kind of cover everything. Like, I'm very impressed, very impressed. It's by far the best product I've used, especially something that does two things and not one. All right, thanks for watching. Catch you later. Bye now.